ANC concluded its 55th National Conference on the 5th of January of this year. We also come together at a time when our country is going through some of its most challenging times in the history of our democracy. The ANC government has made a measurable impact on the lives of South Africans, and we must articulate a number of successes that have been made by the ANC-led government in improving the lives of our people. Some of the more notable successes include broadening access to basic and higher education, especially through initiatives such as no-fee schools and financial aid to higher education students, whose numbers have been growing by leaps and bounds over the years. We have widened access to health care and increased access to the social wage in the form of social grants, free basic electricity, water, housing, and community infrastructure and services. There is a report that says South Africa stands at the top of the welfare that is given to its citizens more than many other countries. Latest available statistics reflect that there are nearly 18 million beneficiaries of state grants such as old age pension, child support and disability grants. In addition, around 7.4 million people receive the 350 social grant of distress, and at times it fluctuates right up to 11 million. In total, nearly 25 million people in our country receive some form of support from the government. This is indicative of both the extent of hardship experienced by the people and the efforts this government is making to address such hardships. Our country is going through one of the most challenging periods since the advent of democracy. Unemployment remains unacceptably high, and many people have lost hope on finding employment. The youth are especially more negatively affected, with nearly a third of young people between ages 15 and 24 who are not in employment, who are not in education, and who are not in training. The electricity crisis continues to undermine economic growth as well as investment. Load shedding damages businesses. It continues to disrupt the livelihoods of our people in various households. It compromises the provision of social services and also affects safety and well-being of our people, especially the women and young girls. Load shedding also has a negative impact on food production, thus threatening food security in our country. Lawlessness, criminality, illegal mining, construction site extortion, cable theft, and violence mean that many people, and especially women and children, continue to live in fear. Due to the rising costs of living, many households are finding it difficult to meet their most basic needs such as food, transport, and energy. Many municipalities are failing to perform their basic functions such as the delivery of clean water, regular waste collection, and road maintenance. Several communities are severely affected by climate change in the form of extreme weather conditions, such as drought, fire, floods that destroy their homes, schools, roads, and bridges. Racism and other forms of discrimination continue to become more prevalent, undermining the values of our constitutional democracy and fueling anger and frustration amongst our people. The 55th conference, recognizing the scope and depth of these various challenges facing our people, has firmly resolved that urgent and decisive action must be taken to place our country back on a developmental path that puts the interests of the people first. The conference also resolved that to adequately respond to the difficulties facing our people, the ANC must deal decisively and fearlessly with our own weaknesses and our own condition. The NEC, building on the mandate of the conference, therefore declared 2023 as the year of decisive action to advance the people's interests and renew our movement, and identifying a number of priorities. Firstly, we must undertake specific initiatives and embark on programs that should deepen, broaden, and ensure that the renewal process of the African National Congress gets fully underway. And by doing this, the byproduct would be to renew South Africa as well. Second, we must accelerate the work to end load shedding. And thirdly, we must mobilize social partners to increase their cooperation and collaboration with a view of addressing the challenge of unemployment and also bring to bear more investment in our economy. And the fourth, that we must improve delivery of basic services and the maintenance of infrastructure. And fifthly, we must strengthen the fight against crime and corruption, and that we must finally do everything we can to build a better Africa and a better world. The scale of the challenges before us, comrades, is enormous. We cannot do everything that needs to be done all at once. Besides everything else, even if we have the will, what might hold us back is the resources that need to be marshaled to do everything that we wish to do. Because should we attempt to address everything with the same urgency and at the same time, we are likely to fail to address anything in the meanwhile. We must therefore prioritize and make choices about the pace and the scale with which we will address some of these very urgent and pressing challenges that face our people. Prioritization, therefore, must be informed firstly by the urgency with which matters must be addressed, and secondly, focus and pay requisite attention to each task, and thirdly, by identifying what trade-offs that we must make in order to meet the challenges before us. Once we have agreement about this prioritization, we must be honest with the people of our country and inform them of our reasoning and approach and how our plans will pan out, as well as attendant programs, and what the targets against which we will measure our performance. In just over a year from now, our country will be holding national and provincial elections. The ANC will then have to engage in probably the most difficult election campaign that we have ever fought. The outcome of that election will have profound implications for the direction of the National Democratic Revolution and indeed for the future of our country. Although no party has had an official launch of its election campaign, as one observes, the campaigns for 2024 elections are well underway. We need to get into election mode without delay. And perhaps this lekgotla, and it must be one of the platforms that we utilize to actually get our election campaign underway. Through our actions now, we need to send a clear message and signal to voters that the ANC is taking all necessary steps to deal with the challenges that our people are confronted with, especially unemployment, the rising cost of living, crime and instability, the poor service delivery. Our focus must therefore be on action, and urgency. The renewal and the rebuilding of our movement is not negotiable, and in fact must be regarded as irreversible and irrevocable. This is an existential issue for us, because if we do not renew our movement, it will simply perish. Only an ANC that is united, that is strong, that is vibrant, is an ANC that can effectively address the needs of the people and advance the National Democratic Revolution. We must unite our movement and move beyond the factional considerations and contestations that have plagued our organization in recent years. Last night we just ended a well-attended first NEC meeting of the year, a meeting in which we all found each other and resolved that the order of the year and the years to come is going to be unity and renewal and finding all best ways through which we can work together. And in this regard, we also spoke about principled unity and a common commitment to the revolutionary values and principles of our movement. It is a unity that must be built on a program of action that is rooted within our communities and a program or programs that speak to the needs of the people. And the building of unity, we agreed and resolved in our NEC meeting, starts with elected leaders of the ANC, be they National Executive Committee, PECs, RECs, and branch committees, who must be activists themselves, who must also be disciplined and be in touch with the people on the ground. In addition, deployed cadres and the public service must also contribute to building national unity through serving the people diligently, with integrity, and with distinction. The NEC in its meeting also co-opted a number of new members so that we can broaden the numbers of the ANC and also make the NEC much more representative. And I congratulate those who were co-opted to the NEC, and I hope that they are going to make a meaningful contribution to the work of the National Executive Committee. A necessary step to renewing our movement is rebuilding vibrant and strong ANC branches that are active in the lives of communities that they serve. We must remain mindful of the ANC constitutional imperative that the ANC must be, in all aspects, democratic, non-racial, non-sexist, and that we must combat any form of racial, tribalistic, or ethnic exclusivism or chauvinism. Our movement must represent the best in society, and we must become more responsive ourselves, much more disciplined in conduct and in what we say, in whatever platform and wherever we are. We must be a well-governed organization, well-resourced, ethical, and caring. The people must see us reflecting the legacy of our heroes and heroines and our forebears in our words and in our actions and in our conduct. Coming back to the big elephant in the room, which is the energy crisis, which we need to do everything to put an end to load shedding for. This is an immediate and a pressing challenge that we need to address. As a result of load shedding, as I said, companies are reluctant to invest. Productivity is lowering. Many companies, particularly your small medium enterprises, are losing their businesses. Economic growth cannot be sustained and jobs cannot be created on the necessary scale. Critical services like water provision, water works, water cleaning processes, healthcare, education are disrupted. Persistent load shedding also adds to safety and security concerns, especially in areas plagued by gangsterism and criminality. As government, we've been holding briefings with a number of stakeholders over the past 2 weeks. The National Energy Crisis Committee and ESCOM has led a number of briefings to update stakeholders on the process and the progress that is being made in implementing the July 2022 Energy Action Plan, which I announced, as well as to outline the work currently underway to accelerate this work. There are a number of areas where progress has been made that we must acknowledge. We have addressed licensing challenges that will enable more megawatts to be brought online by sometime the end of the year. In the past, when I have addressed our people, I have said one of the biggest challenges we have is that we have a shortfall of between 4,000 to 6,000 megawatts. It is for this reason that we have enabled a process of adding to the megawatts that are installed and adding them within our mixed energy resource architecture. And many of these have been coming through renewables, as we will outline in a little while. We have signed agreements that will also generate around 2,800 megawatts. An additional number of megawatts, to start with 300 megawatts rising to 1,000 megawatts, will be procured from our neighboring countries that have surplus power at the moment. And ESCOM has also launched a program to purchase up to 1,000 megawatts of power from companies that have existing generation and have capacity. We've cut red tape and streamlined regulatory processes, reducing the time frames that we've always put in place, but that have now been holding us back on a number of processes. A team of independent experts has been established to work closely with ESCOM to diagnose the problems and to take action to improve plant performance, particularly at the 6 power stations with the most breakdowns. These interventions will take some time to take effect, but we must be honest with our people that as we put ESCOM right, yes, we will continue to have some measure of load shedding. Our objective is to lower the stages of load shedding to a lowest level as we are now allow ESCOM and enable ESCOM to get on with the task that was neglected in the past, that is of maintaining our power stations. We need to explain that in addition to the historical reasons for load shedding, another factor contributing to the current levels of load shedding is ESCOM's effort to correct the mistakes of the past. ESCOM has intensified currently its maintenance program to reduce unplanned breakdowns and extend the life of power stations. Maintenance is crucial for energy security, and this has meant that more generating capacity is taken offline to be maintained so that breakages of those power stations can be fewer and fewer. We also need to address the perception that we are called upon to make a trade-off between energy security and a just transition to a low-carbon economy, that we must make a choice between coal and renewable energy. We must not forget that South Africa's future mix of energy resources is outlined in the Integrated Resource Plan of 2019. That plan, which has been accepted by Cabinet and broadly by society, envisages a diversity of energy sources, including coal, renewables, nuclear, gas, hydro, storage, biomass, and other sources of energy. In terms of the IRP 19, several coal-fired power stations will be decommissioned in years to come. They'll be decommissioned because they will have reached the end of their life cycle. Many of our power stations have an average life cycle right now of 43 years or so. And it becomes a lot more expensive to maintain those power stations that have reached the end of their life cycle. But the good thing that has also happened is that we've now embarked on a trajectory of repurposing these power stations that are going to be decommissioned. Komati Power Station is in the process of being repurposed to become a gas-fired power station, having been a coal-fired power station throughout its life. And in the course of doing that, we will take good care to have a just transition, to get the workers who worked in that power station retrained, refitted themselves, reskilled or upskilled, and to ensure that the communities around these power stations, as they are repurposed, are not left stranded. And I should make it clear that whilst it is necessary not only to reduce carbon emissions, but to address the deteriorating performance of older coal power plants which are nearing their lives. Most of these stations, these coal-fired power stations, including those recently built like Medupi and Kusile, will remain in operation and will continue to provide the base load that our energy architecture requires. Kusile and Medupi cost us much more than we had anticipated. They took much longer time than we had anticipated. And we've experienced design problems with these two mega power stations. If you care to know, the two of them are some of the two biggest in the world. And we have made it clear that there is just no way that we are going to move towards closing Medupi and Kusile. So our energy architecture, comrades, is 80% coal-fired power stations. And there's been a legend or a story that we're moving towards closing coal-fired power stations. And I have personally made it clear to some of those world leaders that we interact with that there's just no way we're going to close those power stations, Medupi, Kusile, and the others, just like that. Those will continue operating. They are a 40-year life type of coal-powered power stations. We have invested a lot of money in those power stations. Those that are reaching the end of their lives, as I said, will be recalibrated, repurposed, yes, as we move towards renewable energy. China, for us, is a very good poster country. They have much of their energy generated through coal-fired power stations, but they have been increasing their renewables over the years. And more reliance is coming through because they are also finding that it is cheaper, but they are still continuing to generate their energy through their existing coal-fired power stations that still have a life. As a matter of principle, the pace and the form of our just transition must be informed by our national interest and by the imperative of energy security. It must be informed by the country's developmental needs, by the availability of resources, and by the need to protect the livelihoods and well-being of our communities. This lekgotla needs to focus on an in-depth basis in discussion on how we can accelerate the implementation of the Energy Action Plan and what additional measures we need to take in the immediate term to reduce the severity and the frequency of load shedding. As directed by conference, our steps must be concrete and they must also be grounded amongst our people. The ANC and government must lead campaigns on how we can manage our electricity usage, including starting campaigns to deal with illegal connections, because illegal connections, whilst they may be done to advantage just a few people, in the end, when those illegal connections overload the transformers in the area, everybody gets into darkness. So we must promote steps that every South African must also take to conserve energy. The installation of prepaid meters must be seen as the best way of managing our electricity usage as well. This was so clearly raised to us or with us by community-based organizations. ANC members and structures must also work with communities and law enforcement agencies to bring criminals and crime syndicates operating around power plants to book. We cannot allow these unscrupulous criminals to devastate the well-being of our nation by getting involved in cable theft and also debilitating our electricity system. Our duty during this crucial period, where South Africans are understandably frustrated and are concerned about the severity and persistence of load shedding, is to reassure our people that we do have a clear path to ease load shedding over the next few months and ultimately to achieve much better energy security. In doing so, all of us must speak with one voice, providing people with confidence that it is within our ability to address this crisis, as we must address it. The ANC has a duty to mobilize social partners to increase employment and investment and to deepen empowerment as well as transformation. Unemployment is the greatest challenge we are facing, and it is through getting people, especially young people, into jobs that we can hope to significantly reduce poverty, inequality, and hopelessness, and also advance social cohesion and stability and realize the full potential of our economy. The Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan provides a robust, ambitious, and focused program to rebuild our economy in the wake of COVID-19. It is a plan that was guided by the ANC and also its alliance partners and developed through engagements with social partners. While we have made progress in several areas with regard to the plan, our task now is to accelerate and deepen the implementation of that plan. This lekgotla needs to reflect on the progress that has been made and identify those areas that require greater and more sustained attention. We will need to look critically at those actions that have the greatest potential to drive growth and create jobs. These include investment in infrastructure, reducing regulatory burdens for small businesses, cooperatives and the informal sector, and promoting greater local production, that is localization. We must examine the structural reforms that are necessary to make our economy more competitive and efficient, particularly when it comes to the export aspect of our economy. In addition to the far-reaching reforms underway, the electricity sector, we need to address the severe challenges in the operations of our railways and our ports, not leaving out our roads. Many roads in our country are falling apart. We also need to finalize the digital migration process and also our visa regime so that we can attract those skills that our economy needs to grow our tourism numbers. Only by attending to these reforms with urgency will we be able to realize the potential of our economy to meet the needs of our people. In the course of doing this, we must also attend to the restructuring of our economy. We must attend to our industrial policy. We must attend to the new sectors that are beckoning, hydrogen economy and many others. And we need to use the power and capabilities of the state more effectively. It is true that several of our strategic SOEs are in great difficulty at the moment, but they have the potential to drive the economy of our country as we pursue sustainable turnaround plans in some of our SOEs. We need to undertake the broader reform of our SOE architecture to ensure that these vital public assets serve the national interests. We have also seen over the past 15 months how effective public and social employment programs can be complementing efforts to encourage private sector job creation. The presidential employment stimulus and other programs have demonstrated what a capable developmental state can achieve. We must sustain this and build on these areas of great impact. Millions of people across the country depend on our local government for crucial services, and we must improve service delivery and maintenance of municipal infrastructure. Too many municipalities have collapsed, and our people have to deal with almost daily sewage spills, water restrictions and shortages, uncollected rubbish, potholes, and inaccurate billings. Exacerbating these problems is the state of municipal and social infrastructure, and improperly or unskilled people in municipal positions, which badly affects people's quality of life and local economic activity. This situation cannot continue, and we must work with urgency. Should I wait a bit? This situation cannot continue, and we must work with urgency and focus to strengthen government departments, municipalities, state-owned enterprises, and other public agencies to ensure that they deliver on their mandates. The collapse of some of the municipalities and poor service delivery are related to what has been termed political administrative interface. This means that many of the issues at municipal level can be laid at the door of elected representatives, and we must be proactive and resolute in addressing these issues. It is up to us to ensure that we put forward competent and appropriately qualified colleagues to become our public representatives. We must also be more diligent in ensuring that competent and qualified individuals take up crucial positions in municipalities. The district development model must be fully implemented across the country to improve the integrated planning and coordination. The provision of basic services such as water, waste removal will receive priority. The delivery of basic infrastructure will be made to support localization, empowerment, and the meaningful participation of local communities. We are building partnerships as we speak with the private sector on infrastructure finance and the technical support to accelerate the delivery of basic services, especially in rural and poor resource municipalities. There are a number of actions that we are undertaking to strengthen the fight against crime and corruption and ensure the safety of our country. We are going to ensure that we give speedy effect to the conference resolutions to further strengthen law enforcement agencies and the criminal justice system. In the end, ANC members and structures must mobilize our citizens to get involved in the process of entrenching peace and stability in areas where our people live through community policing forums. We must strengthen and support efforts to deal with violence against women and children. On a daily basis, we continue hearing grueling stories of how the women of our country, almost on a daily basis, are being slaughtered by the men of our country, some of whom say they love those women. And we call specifically on men and boys to become better allies in the fight against this scourge. Corruption is the enemy of the people, and the ANC remains committed to taking a tough stance against corruption within its ranks. Just last night, I was talking to a very brilliant young chartered accountant. Told me that I had wanted to provide service to our government. And as I had gone ahead to prove all my credentials with regard to providing this service, an official then said, "We will only be able to recommend you if you pay us some money." And in the end, she said, "I will not pay." And she did not get the opportunity to serve our people. It is this type of corruption that we need to nip in the bud. It is this type of corruption that we need to deal with. We have whistleblowers, and today in the Sunday Times, there's a front page story that talks, private sector, that talks about the efforts she made to expose corruption. She's been marginalized, railroaded out of the company, persecuted. Corruption pervades all over in the public sector and in the private sector. It has become a social ill, a national social ill, which we must root out of South Africa. Quite often, many people criticize government, they lampoon the governing party for corruption and pay little attention on the corruption that continues to rage also in the private sector. It has become a national disease. And all of us as South Africans must work together to eliminate this silent killer of opportunity and economic growth. The ANC affirms its commitment to building a better Africa and a better world. And our foreign policy policies are informed by the understanding that multilateralism and respect for international law are key to the global political and economic stability. South Africa will this year chair BRICS. Well, it is chairing BRICS as we speak now, because ahead of the Heads of State Summit in August, there are hundreds of meetings that are taking place through a various number of forums. As we chair BRICS, we will bring together a number of initiatives that are aimed at advancing our continent's interests and indeed our country's interests, with a view of promoting more equitable access for Africa to the global economy. And we will continue to strengthen our solidarity interventions around the world as well. We will, of course, continue to pledge our support for many other peoples who are involved in struggles around the world. We reiterate our calls that those who still have colonial control over various other portions or countries in the world should allow the people, particularly of Western Sahara, to have self-determination, and we will continue to support the people of Palestine. In conclusion, comrades and friends, this lekgotla must give effect to the directive from the National Conference that we must be decisive, we must be resolute in taking actions to address the challenges that our people are facing. And I'd like to say, rather than use this lekgotla as a complaint forum, rather than use it as a lamenting forum, I urge us all to use this lekgotla as a platform and an opportunity to come up with ideas that are going to enhance the project that is underway to advance the interests of our people. As we think through the various issues in our commissions, it is this that I urge all of us to do. Creativity, innovation, new ideas. And of course, they must be based on clear analysis of where we are and then come up with very clear alternatives. This lekgotla has always been the brain power of our nation. This is where the real top brains of our country get together through all the formations that we have in the mass democratic movement to come and bolster the efforts of the African National Congress. I wish you good discussions in your commissions and in the plenary sessions as well. Thank you very much.
Comrades, let's do this. Their comrades were standing against the wall there. They are sitting here in front. Their comrades were standing against the wall there. They are sitting here in front. Comrades,
I've been told to take the microphone.
comrades, the media is the birthday today. We're getting to the closed session now.
Media comrades. Thanks.
Thank you. We love you. Go back.